Hearty welcome to another episode of Comedians on Zoom Getting Jalebi. That's the weird title I have, Pramod. So hope you like it, and probably at the end of the call, I'll take inputs about how I could rebrand and things like that.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
It rings a bell because there is a show on Netflix called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee or
Coffee.
something like that.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
a very
yes.
interesting take on that name.
True. Uh, so, thank you so much for accepting to be on the show, Pramod. I have seen you as a speaker. I have seen your work as a storyteller, and most of the times online, offline as well. I must say, like you from a storytelling perspective, definitely you are one person. Many fellow storytellers would admire. So it's actually very happy to have you on the show today. Pramod, let us start at the beginning. So, tell us about how was it growing up in Kerala, and how is it different from growing up anywhere else in the world, and all the way going to Mumbai to pursue your mass communication post graduation. So, tell us something about it.
Yeah, Kerala, to answer your first question first, uh, where I grew up was Cochin,
Yes.
and my home was just about a kilometer from the sea as the crow flies. So growing up there was very unique and very special because even though Cochin is a city which is chock-a-block with houses and everything, even those days, it still had a lot of that rustic seaside charm.
Right.
In the sense, every June during the first monsoon, water would flood the streets and water would enter the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not something to be alarmed about. It was a happy occasion because it's like the sea mother, the sea goddess is gracing us with her presence.
Right.
And the fish would come inside the house.
Okay.
There have been so many times when I put my foot, I woke up in the morning and I got up from my bed and I put my foot down and there's water around me and there is fish gently swimming around. And my brother and I would go out and catch the fish with a homemade rod and tackle. So it was, and there was a lot of running around and playing with friends in the neighborhood, going for boat rides, getting wet in the rain. So, and also I partly grew up in the hinterland of the Malabar countryside.
Okay.
My grandfather was a traditional Ayurvedic healer
Wow.
who had, yeah, and also a farmer and a landholder.
Mm.
So every vacation we would go there and we would help him in his medicine shop. And, he was also an elephant healer
Oh,
and what you may call an elephant whisperer in these
right,
days.
right.
So he used to treat elephants, especially for their eyesight problems. And many a time there was an elephant generally ambling around in the yard who had come for treatment. So it was, looking back, I was lucky to have that kind of a childhood,
Yeah,
where today's children may not be able to
I know.
dream
I
about.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like an absolute dream, like, straight out of one of those pictures that we see. So beautiful and picturesque. So, yeah, so, I mean, after that, tell us about your education and, how
See, I went to school in this school run by CMI priests in Kerala called Rajagiri High School. It was again tucked away in the hills of a place called Kalamacheri near the Cochin University of today.
okay.
And after that, I studied in Maharaja's College in Cochin. I did my pre-degree and my English literature graduation from there.
Right.
And then I tasted the life of a dropout. I joined for my master's in English language and literature. I
Right.
dropped out in a couple of months. Then I joined the law college in Calicut. Since my father was a lawyer, I thought I could check out that career option, but I didn't complete the course. In the sense, I completed the course,
Right.
did 3 years of law, but then I dropped out before writing exams.
Right.
I was working alongside. After the first year of law, I started working. I was barely 20 or 21 in those days. And after my non-graduation in law, I moved to Bombay. I joined St. Xavier's College and did my
Yeah.
postgraduate diploma in mass communication from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's about my rather limited education is concerned.
So, I mean, how was advertising? Like, I know you spent majority of your time in advertising, and you have been a
Yes.
copywriter as well. So,
Yeah.
tell us about, where did you think, like, you had that creative element to get into advertising, or it just happened like that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. See, my household was full of writers.
Right.
My both my mother's brothers were into writing. One of them was a very well-known literary critic in Malayalam. Even
Mhm.
today, people recognize his name,
Okay.
T.N. Jayachandran.
Oh, T.N.
So my
Jayachandran. I've heard that name.
T.N. Jayachandran, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
He was the chairman of Cochin Port Trust and the vice chancellor of Calicut University. He was a very prominent man in those days, a
Hmm.
collector of Kottayam city.
Right.
So he was a very well-known name. I mean, he was a household name in those days, and he and my father used to write till his last days. He used to write something or the other. My mother was is again a published writer. So there was atmosphere of books and writing in the house all the time, you know. And my father being a leftist co-passenger, like you say, the house was full of books by Russian writers. So along with Rabindranath Tagore and Takashi Shivashankara Pillai, I grew up hearing names of Maxim Gorky, Ivan Turgenev, you know, Leo Tolstoy. They were almost like members of the household,
Hmm.
you know. So I knew somewhere, both my brother and I had this feeling that someday we are also going to write.
Yeah.
You know, it was like it was like growing up in a circus tent
Right.
and knowing that you will be, you know, a gymnast or a tightrope walker or an
Yes.
animal trainer sometime.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how it happened. And copy, because I was intrigued by advertising right from my younger days. I used to read all the press ads, and I was enamored by some of the work that MA, prominent agency in those days,
Right.
they did their work. And I interned with a small ad agency in Cochin for some time. And then my brother was in Bombay. He was working with Hindustan Petroleum in those days. So after some time, I got a little tired and cloistered working in the little studio that I was working in as a photographer and a darkroom hand.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, I must find out what is at the end of the rainbow. So I boarded a train to Bombay. My stayed with my brother and his flatmate Tojo, who is one of my very good friends. And then from there, the journey started. I found admission in Xavier's.
Right.
And then during the course, I figured out, okay, I want to be a copywriter and I want to be
Nice. 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 So, when you look at the changes that have come in advertising as well as media communication and things, do you think it has changed a lot in terms of the kind of text that we write as well as the amount of text that we write? Because I find it like, these days it is very difficult to influence by writing the way we used to write earlier. So, is there a significant change in influencing through advertising or through text or communication through text that you see?
Yeah. Again, a very incisive question. I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah.
Um, Changes wise, there are lots of changes in the way advertising is done today.
Hmm.
Lots and lots of changes, you know, because I think the advent of digital media
Right.
and the advent of instant communication has changed the way the written word is treated in advertising.
Hmm.
because apparently the attention span is very short in today's digital world, with which I do not necessarily agree completely.
Right.
I would still say that if the subject interests you, if the treatment interests you, you will still go on and read
Right.
till the end. Like how much time do people spend on phone science?
Right.
Like ours, right?
Yeah.
If we get if we see a post today talking about how to improve as a Toastmaster, how to reach your DTM in 2 months, we are going to read that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really buy the argument of lack of attention, but let us accept that it's a phenomenon, and because of that, uh, the ads have become shorter. I'm saying earlier we had 20-second and 10-second spots, but we have like 3-second, 4-second spots on digital media.
Right. Right.
Headlines are shorter, the ideas are shorter. It is all about just getting an eyeball and moving on, and it's also very topical. You plant a small video inside another video
Right.
and hope that people watch. So, because of the restrictions imposed by the media, it has become very telegraphic, very short
Mm.
and pithy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
So, it is a completely, and looking at the variety of digital media, you have Twitter, which is limited in content, remarkably. Then you have Facebook, and then you have LinkedIn. In all these things, there is a different way of communicating. So, within all that, the written communication has become so truncated,
Right.
in size. That is one observation. Second observation is because of texting and again because of the so-called lack of time, the necessity to have a good language, the necessity, the criticality of having the right expression have vanished.
Right.
If you today, many so-called copywriters
Mm.
cannot write a decent sentence.
Right.
Okay, so many agency heads some call me up and say, "Hey, can you find me a good writer?"
Mm.
So I ask them, "What is a good writer? Is it somebody who can occupy that position and churn out ad after ad? Maybe I can find you. But if you want me to find a good writer, I don't know."
Right.
So these are the two things that have happened and also you mentioned the length of copy, right?
Mm.
Long copy ads have become very, very
Very
rare,
rare. Right.
very, very rare, which I really miss because we in early days had to really train ourselves in writing body copy.
Mm.
You know, I have my bosses were extremely strict and extremely unpardoning when it came to mistakes in copy.
Right.
So, but the good thing is that even today, the long copy ad is venerated as an ancient phenomenon.
Mm.
Like even now, the best of copywriters take a detour and write an ad full of long copy and post it on digital media. It is
Right.
venerated like we venerate a woolly mammoth or something.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It is not existing now, but
Right.
we are curious and we are respectful about it. So that's a good
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah, and I think it is still relevant today because when we are looking at this subtle positioning of certain aspects, and when we are writing a particular thing, not directly trying to sell something, but subtly trying to position some of these things, it is essential you write longer ad copies, which are need not be necessarily called as advertisements today, but probably some kind of a review or other things where we kind of plug in the thought of buying something. So,
Absolutely, absolutely,
uh,
yeah.
great, great. So, in this whole phenomenon, Pramod, I wanted to understand that you also do a lot of writing workshops as well.
Yeah.
So how do the today's generation or whoever is interested in writing kinds of creates a blueprint for themselves to become a writer? So irrespective of how the text statistics are going around, whatever, I think writers have a huge responsibility in terms of providing a thought process or a thought-provoking note to the readers, or even self-expressing whatever is their idea as such. So, how do people go about that?
Yeah, see, I think to a great extent, I believe writers are born, to a great extent. You may be able to learn the craft of writing. I think virtually anybody can learn the craft of writing, but you may not be able to have the heart for writing.
Right.
Uh, a, a good writer, a really, really good writer, is somebody who romances words,
Mm-hmm.
who get turned on by words. Like I
Yes.
remember one of my friends who was a professor at the Language Institute in Hyderabad, saying
Mm-hmm.
that these people find a word that they love and they pitch a tent over it.
Mm-hmm.
They pitch a tent over that word and sit in that tent and ruminate on that word for a long time.
True, true, true,
You
true.
know,
Yes.
so it is an obsession. It's a calling.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that you love doing for yourself.
Right.
The best writers that I know, and I can give you names. There
Yeah.
are many in Bangalore. Like you take Deepak Joshi of Ogilvy, ex Ogilvy Deepak
Yeah.
Joshi, Rajiv Raja of Mudra. So many others I can think of. They are guys who write even if they don't have a reason to write. They
Right.
just write.
True.
And if you happen to write a good sentence sitting in your office the whole day, evening you go out and celebrate that one sentence.
One sentence. True.
Okay, so that is when you're reading a good book, like an old book like Somerset Maugham, you come across a phrase, and that phrase gives you goosebumps.
Yes.
So initially, I'm saying to start with, you need to be a person like that to be a good writer.
Mm.
You need to be a good you need to be a person like that to be a good writer. So
Right.
apart from that, after that, there are so many ways to understand creative writing. You can read, you can craft your writing, you can attend a course, you can read a book, you can have a mentor. So there are so many ways of structuring and fine tuning and orienting your writer
Right.
that you become a good writer in the process.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So there are many ways. Like if you want to become a copywriter, one way is to start reading the ads, reading the old ads, and reading up the reasons behind it. Reading David Ogilvy's book, Confessions of an Advertising Man,
Yeah.
or Ogilvy on advertising, and there are so many other old, ancient famous copywriters. You read them. You intern with an advertising agency, and there are so many ways.
Right.
But you need to go through them. But today again, I may sound like a bitter old man when I say this, but everybody wants instant nirvana.
Right. Right. Right.
Like you join a yoga class. I was quite into yoga at one time. The new entrant always asks the teacher, "I want to
Mm.
lose weight in 3 weeks' time. Is it possible?"
Right.
First of all, yoga and losing weight are not really interconnected. And
Right.
secondly, the obesity that is caused by 30 years of indulgence and overeating, you want to cure in 3 days' time.
It's true.
And the person who creates two mediocre videos, wants to start a YouTube channel
Yes.
and be
Yes.
successful.
Yes.
So anybody with an SLR is a photographer. So
Right.
today the entire definition of good, or remarkable or outstanding has changed so much. And we shouldn't complain. That's the way the world is.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that is how a good writer is born.
True. And in fact, I'm reminded of Gulzar Saab's words that, कभी कभी अल्फाज ढूंढने में जिंदगी लग जाती है. So apparently he kind of is restless most of the times because he couldn't find the right word, and there are so many pending poems that he has.
Yeah.
And on that
You
note,
won't.
yeah,
Sorry, I'll just add one thing.
yeah,
Most of our clients are in Storyloft.
Right.
Most of our clients have no idea how much we go back and refine our already finished work.
Right.
You know, they we finish our work. It is good and it is functional, and
Mm.
then we have a second thought: have you polished it enough? Wouldn't that word, if we change that word, wouldn't that shine a little bit more?
Right.
Nobody may notice it, but for our satisfaction, we go back and say, yeah, sorry
Yes.
about that. Yeah.
True. Yeah. So, Pramod, on that note, I found it very interesting. Just like Gulzar Sahab, even you don't like your poems to rhyme. So, tell
Yeah.
tell me something about I mean this whole phenomenon of why you like poems that don't rhyme and why you only do black and white photography. Is there a kind of pattern on these things?
Yeah, see, rhyming. Actually, I have a confession to make. One of the reasons why I don't like rhyming is because I can't write good rhyming poetry.
Okay.
So whenever I tried hard to make my poetry rhyme, I've only had disastrous results. So
Okay.
there is a blanket. It's like Sa grapes.
Okay.
So there is a lot of beautiful rhyming poetry out there.
Yes, yes, yes. Definitely.
Yeah, you take in your school days you might have read R.L. Stevenson, Robert Louis Stevenson's poem From a Railway Carriage.
Yeah.
Uh, Faster than fairies, faster than witches, bridges and houses, hedges and ditches,
Huh.
storming away like troops in a battle, all through the meadows, the horses and cattle. Beautiful rhyme scheme. It's like a divine rhyme scheme.
Right.
But I'm not able to get there. Okay, that is one. And secondly, I feel that when you let the thoughts flow from your psyche, from your heart, whatever, when it is unfettered by the limitations of rhyme and reason, it flows much, much, much better.
Right.
And the pattern in non-rhyme itself has got a structure.
Hmm.
You know, I'm talking about good poetry. I'm talking
Yes,
about
yes.
poetry that moves you.
Right.
A lot of it, like you take immortal poet who was considered who is considered the best romantic poet in the world, Pablo Neruda. Okay,
Pablo.
Pablo Neruda,
Yeah.
his poetry doesn't rhyme. A
Right.
lot of Adil Deswala poetry doesn't rhyme. So rhyming is today, I mean, started long time back, is not a prerequisite for good poetry, and I think it rhyme sometimes holds down the quality of poetry. And thirdly, there is especially for new poets and people who are not really poets but who want to sound like poets, there is a strong tendency to believe that if it rhymes, it is poetry.
Right. Okay.
So I've having been exposed to a lot of that and having
Hmm.
been amused and to an extent been irritated by that, I like saying that you know
Right.
I'm a rhyme hater, but I'm not actually one.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Coming back to photography, you asked me that question as well.
Yeah.
See, sometimes color, it takes away the what do you call it, the graphic truth behind things.
Okay.
Okay, so when it is in black and white, you see the shapes and the patterns and the disturbing graphic nature of your image much stronger.
Hmm.
It just hits you between the eyes.
Right.
That is one way of looking at it. Second way of looking at it is that I'm interested in the form and texture and shape of things, but not really in the color of things. When you view things without color, it gives you another dimension.
Right.
So which dimension was a necessity in the earlier days when great photographers like Ansel Adams shot his work. There was only black and white.
Right.
But when you go back and see those pictures, you wonder if they had shot it in color, whether they would have been as beautiful. My answer is no.
Okay.
So my heart speaks in black and white
Right.
photography.
True.
So I exhibit only black and white work. I
Yes.
do take color pictures, but I exhibit only black and white work.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Suddenly, I find all the regular photographers to be racist with.
No, there are
Good.
many guys who shoot only in black and white even today. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I respect a photographer called Sabir Ahmed.
Mm.
Sabir runs a film studio, a black and white film processing studio even today from his house.
Oh, nice, nice.
If you, I still shoot in film.
You still shoot in film? Oh,
Film, yeah, I still shoot in
okay.
film. I
Nice.
still shoot in film. I have a film SLR
Okay.
which weighs a ton.
Oh.
Yeah, it was made of brass. Mr. Allama Prabhu of Prabhu Photos in Brigade Road, he washes the negatives.
Right, right.
Sabir Ahmed also washes the negatives. So I still shoot in black, in film, on film, I mean.
Oh,
I still do.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, I mean, how is it like shooting in film kind of more engaging than any of these other trends? Like,
See, film, I still hang on to it because I am still enamored by the process of creating the picture, you know. See,
right,
it is far more engaging. In earlier days, you had to go and buy the film roll.
right.
Okay, you had to spend a lot of your hard-earned money for it. You had to open the back of the camera and load it in very carefully, close it, and shoot the film
Right.
with manually exposing the film. Okay, and then you had to take it to the dark room, close the dark room, put on the red light, and process the film. Okay,
Yes.
process the film in a daylight tank, then take it out and print it. So you were engaged. You're part of the process of creating the
Creating
picture.
a picture.
And when you take the print on your enlarger, you dodge certain areas with your fingers like this, and you literally create. I mean, you come very close to a sculptor.
Right, right.
So, in a film camera, a part of that is still existing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that engagement of the photographer with the medium is a little bit deeper.
Right,
I'm
right.
not saying it is a good thing compared to the digital medium or a bad thing compared to digital medium. I'm just saying it is different.
Yeah, it's
And I
different.
relate to that, being one of the, you know,
Right.
probably one of the last exponents of film cameras, who somebody who cut his teeth on film cameras. I still like that. It's a bit of my youth coming back to me when I hold that
Mm.
camera in my hands. So otherwise, I'm sure if I learn the digital medium well enough, I can shoot these very pictures maybe a little better in a digital camera also.
Right, right, right. Very much, very much. Super. Great. Pramod, like I clearly can see how the storyteller emerged because whether it's poetry or photography, I think there was constantly a storytelling that was happening with you. So, how did all of this finally converge into storytelling, and how did you start doing storytelling and things like
See, even from a very young age, I used to love stories.
that? Right.
Right? I used to, my mother tells me that when I was 1.5 years old, I used to tell her stories.
Okay.
Okay, I used to have this imaginary Chinese classmate.
Right.
Okay, and I used to tell my mother stories about my classmate, Chinese guy. And I
Okay.
hadn't even started going to school then.
Right.
So, and I used to write stories on paper, write stories in my head all the time. And I used to read a lot. I still read a lot. So, stories are something that have really enamored me right from childhood. And somewhere along the line, I realized that the story is the heart of everything. You know, every person has a story.
Right.
Everything has a story.
Right.
You know, I'm holding this. You know, it's a pen holder.
Right.
It's a pen holder. This pen holder has several stories. There is a story about how it physically came to existence.
Yes.
Okay, from its design, from the part where the aluminum was mined from the heart of the earth. It was smelted, it was made into sheets, it was cut, etc., etc. And then it went to the factory. So, and there is that one level of story. Other level of story is that one of my friends, she saw this thing on Amazon someday, and she thought, okay, Pramod would love this because he loves fountain pens. She ordered it, and it came to me as a surprise. I opened the packet, I saw this, and my eyes started twinkling. So that is another. everything that you take, even the most inane, insignificant, despicable thing on earth has got a story behind it. And the story is the thing that makes a difference. When it comes to branding, every brand needs a story. If without a story, it will fail.
Hey.
Okay. So, and that is one part of it. Secondly, the stories are the things that can be articulated in the best possible manner.
Right.
When you have an audience and you have, the mandate of telling them a story, you can summon so many different resources, to make the story come along. It can be layered. You can use props, you can use your voice, you can use your intonation, you can use movement. All those Toastmasterly things you can use. Plus, you can use theater, you can use singing, you can use music. So it is a multi-layered thing. It's a humongously multi-layered thing, storytelling. And at another level, you can use comedy, you can use pathos, you can use satire, and you don't need anything.
Right.
You can stand in the corner of a road without a single thing in your hand, and then you can tell a convincing story.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You know,
True.
so it is one of the most underrated tools that mankind has, and it's been discovered. Like in the last 5 years, everyone is talking about stories.
Storytelling. Yeah.
No, nobody asked what is the personality of your brand. You know, people ask what is the story behind your brand. What is the storytelling? Everybody's talking about
But
storytelling.
story. True.
Yeah.
True. True. It has got even into software language where whatever is the user experience is now called user stories, and
Yeah. I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting used. So, Pramod, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I find in many people who are storytellers, writers, poets, is that fundamental thing among all of this is they being emotional, which kind of reflects in all of this. So, what I have seen is that, especially friends who are into poetry, they still recall some of those poems that they have read as kids, that it's like the greatest thing they could share with somebody, feeling, and they're very emotional about things that happen around them. They kind of reflect as well as respond quite em- empathetically, I would say. Is this the fundamental characteristic to become an artist as such? What do you feel?
Yeah, a very, very good question. Mm, see, I think a good artist is emotionally very deep.
Right.
A good artist feels things in a magnified manner.
Hmm.
Because just like a scientist, to understand a virus, the scientist has to put the virus under a microscope and see it properly up close. It helps an artist if he or she sees life amplified. And naturally, that amplified life disturbs the artist. So the reactions are also amplified. You know, the best example is Van Gogh, who cut his ear off and gave it to his girlfriend. And yeah, it is almost a necessity. Uh, there is this great writer called Arun Kolatkar he writes in Marathi and in English. He writes about the inner lanes of Mumbai. Okay, writes such beautiful, amazingly lovely poetry about uh, inner lanes of Mumbai. If you and I go there, we won't see what provoked his poetry.
Yes, yes.
But for him, even a crack on the sidewalk speaks.
Right,
Even the way a dog walks across the road speaks.
right,
Those are points of pain or points of pleasure for him.
right.
So this magnification And this extra sensitivity to that magnification is necessary for the poet to write in a way that affects his audience.
Right.
Okay, it's like if imagine any great saxophone player.
Mm.
Without the saxophone, he will not be able to play his music.
Plain. Right.
It's almost like that. Without that amplification, that only the deeply resonant, deeply emotional, deeply sensitive artist possesses,
Mm.
it may not be able to write or paint that way. I'll give you an example. Once I was in this art class where
Mm.
the professor spoke about a certain art museum in France, I think, if I'm not mistaken, where all the exhibits are pieces of art made by mentally disturbed people. Okay, and some of these people did not even realize that they were creating art.
Okay.
One guy was just filling up his logbook with colors,
Mm.
and another woman was just knitting a shawl. But in their unconscious process of creation, the angst in their hearts expressed themselves in those pieces of paper or on that shawl, as the case may be. And they became so beautiful that some curator found them and framed them and put it in.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm saying. That inner turmoil or that inner ecstasy.
Mm.
Okay, when you read Pablo Neruda's poetry, there is agony and ecstasy in that. The
Yes.
height and
Both.
lows of love. You know, this true artist who has a microscope inside him, he is able to understand. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, 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 very much,
Yeah.
very much. Super. So on that note, I also wanted to ask you. I realize personally, you have gone through a rare medical condition, and within the family also, you had some medical related issues, and but
Yeah, yeah.
you have very toughly faced them and emerged a winner.
Mm.
So would you want to tell us something about that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why not? Yeah, if it helps the listener, definitely.
Yes.
I was diagnosed with a version of motor neuron disease. It is also known as ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I was diagnosed with a version of that at a very young age. And the classic MND cases come with a very bad prognosis. The demise usually happens in 5 years. And before that, there is a rapid deterioration of muscle tissue as well as nerve tissue. So that is a condition that I was diagnosed with, and I have fought for almost 30 years now. Mm. So that is my condition. And my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer almost yeah, roughly 10 years back. And yeah, she also battled it and came out of it stronger. So there was a time when there was two uh, so-called potential terminal illnesses running parallel in the house.
Right.
Even now, even though she has we have gotten rid of it, there's no trace of cancer cells in her body. That's what. Today, I still continue to suffer
Right.
from it, yeah, from my condition. But fortunately, it is not a rapidly progressing variety
Right.
like the classic MND cases. But I suffer from a lot of pain on a daily basis, deep neural pain, constant 24/7
Right.
neural pain, high amounts of fatigue. I've lost a lot of muscle tissue. So normal life is difficult with this condition. So to give you a snapshot of uh, the family medical history,
Right.
that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Pramod, why I really wanted to talk about this was today the way healthcare related media is functioning is that even people with exactly normal health are prompted to take up so many tests, and regularly there is so much of anxiety because of which there isn't any focus or interest to get into anything else. Whereas you are
Mm.
somebody who has proved that even with a very serious condition like that, you still have gone on to do so much of work in terms of photography, poetry, storytelling, music, and so many things. So, what was it that made you, kind of so strong in terms of to put this aside and, or be courageous enough to go ahead and pursue what you wanted to?
See, Kishore, I was not the person that you know.
Right,
The first 2 years after my diagnosis, I was a broken man.
right, right.
You know, in fact, both my wife and I went through extreme, you know, mental anguish. Naturally, you can very well
Yes.
imagine. But it took a little time for me to come to this position. I think every day um, told me something. So there are many factors. One is to have a very positive and supportive doctor.
Right.
I think I was lucky.
Oh,
Dr. Srinivasa, who I've been seeing for almost 28 years, he's like a father figure to me. He's very proud of me, and every time we go to see him, he, even if he gives me the a bad piece of news, I come out of his room smiling. So I think it's very important to have a doctor who is supportive. And secondly, it helps if you have slightly clinical attitude towards it.
right.
Like one of the things that I'm quoting Dr. Srinivasa, he said, listen, there's no guarantee that I will live longer than you. He said, I can get out of my clinic one day and a truck can come and hit me. I'm quoting him.
Right.
Okay. So it can happen to anybody at any time. It's not in our hands. And thirdly, if you realize that a long life is no guarantee of a happy life,
Hmm.
and the converse is also true. I was reading somewhere during the early days of my diagnosis that one should enjoy life, one should treat life like a boy eating or a child eating an ice cream cone on a hot summer
Right.
day. Okay. The child knows that the ice cream cone is melting fast.
Hmm.
So each lick that he gives the ice cream cone starts becoming tastier.
Right.
So I'm that boy. I've been that boy for 28 years. So I know the texture, the flavor, the smell, the taste of each, each piece of mint on that ice cream cone. And that's how I'm treating life now.
True.
I've learned to control my mind. Uh, it may sound weird, but a lot of time I just switch off my mind. I'm
Hmm.
moving through life, I'm doing my everyday things, but my mind isn't working. I've
Right.
switched it off.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That helped.
True.
I think it was Dr. Eckhart Tolle who said once that the mind is the cause of most of men's miseries. You
Hmm.
treat the mind like a screwdriver. When you need it, you take it out of its box, use it, and put it back into its box.
Right. Right. Right.
So when I encounter something that has got potential of disturbing me, I
Right.
think about it for a second. Do I need to think about this question now? Is it going to
Hmm.
help me or not? If I don't
Right.
need to think about it, I just move on. I don't think about that at all.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So that is number two. And thirdly, this desire to finish things when you know
Hmm.
that you may not have enough time, you're reminded of your calling.
Right.
So I put myself into everything.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So in case, unfortunately, situation arises where I'm incapable of doing something, or if I'm not around, you know, if I hit the end of my life, I would still have done something by then.
Yes. True.
Okay, that is number four, and number five is I went to a lot of alternate healers.
Hmm.
When I realized that there was not much that you can do in allopathy, I've done the whole 9 yards,
Okay.
right from the really sublime to the truly ridiculous,
Hmm.
right from the really, you know, angelic healers to the really money-minded and
Hmm.
reprehensible ones. I have gone to everybody, and they have all helped me in some way or the other.
Right.
I've been to a mind healer who I still am in contact with.
Hmm.
Mm, he was able to. gauge my condition sitting far away also. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how. I don't even know whether I believe in all the extra whatever things that
Right.
he believes in. I don't know whether I believe in it, but I've seen it working.
Right.
So all these things. So these are the five things basically. And to put it all in one sentence, have a very strong mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy as it sounds. It may sound like a cliche. It may sound like every positive, thinking coach tells you, but have a mind that is like a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think you won the battle. Because I've seen people who were diagnosed later than me
Right.
suddenly giving up on their minds,
Right.
caving in and becoming desperate, and in a few months' time they know.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen that happen. So it's very important to, yeah, train your mind so that.
Sure.
And then your friends, I mean, I have a lot of extremely unconditional friends who will stand by me and joke about
Mm-hmm.
my illness and.
Thank you so much, Pramod. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think the one sentence that having a longer life doesn't necessarily make it a happier one kind of puts everything in perspective. I'm sure this is going to help a lot of people who have or might have any issues as such. So I really thank you so much. And like you mentioned, having unconditional friends, I was talking to some of your friends, and all of them unanimously mentioned that you go way out to kind of support them, and in kinds of times of turbulence, you have definitely stood with them and things like that. Like even if it was like questioning the norm or standing up against established people, you did it for friends and things like that. So that was interesting. So among all of this, one thing very interesting that many have told about is the Alagult Anand Mat. You know, I don't know if this is a character or something, but I couldn't get many. I mean, any pieces of what it is about. But I was told, like, once in a while, these. Statements or short stories pop up with this particular character, and it's very funny, humorous, and all. So, tell us about that.
I never, Kishore, I never thought you'll ask me about that. So it's like bingo, you caught me there. See, I'll tell you the genesis of Gurudev Sri Algultananda. Algult is the word.
Right.
Algult means chaos. See,
Okay.
in Cochin, there is a intermingling of languages, because as you know, the visitors from overseas, right from
Yeah.
the pre-biblical times, all kinds
Right.
of travelers have reached Cochin,
Yeah.
and even today, what we speak is the Malayalam that we speak is very generously interspersed with words from European and Chinese and so many other. So
Mm.
Algult, I don't know where it came from. Probably it came from Arabic. I'm just guessing. Algult means chaos.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so in Malayalam, when everything goes down the drain, we say Ella Algultai,
Okay.
Algult. So that is one side of it. The other side of it is that I have a very intense hatred towards self-appointed godmen.
Right.
Okay, I I try to read about some of these people who profess to be spiritual leaders, and after a fair amount of reading and fair amount of observation, I've realized that some of them do not have too much depth, and even some of them do not have so much of care for the people in the world who they are supposedly trying to heal and help and all that.
Right.
So my theory is that anybody with a good communication skills and a decent amount of aura,
Right.
can become a very manipulative godman.
Mm.
A lot of the Toastmasters I know.
Right.
If they put their mind to it, they can be the next, I don't want to name anybody,
Yes, yes,
because
yes.
they have excellent communication skills and they are really presentable.
Right, right.
Okay. I'm sure CK and Francis would not mind my saying this. If CK,
I know.
if CK wanted to be Swami Chendilananda tomorrow,
Right,
I
right.
think he'll be a very successful Swami. But
Sure.
so Albultananda is my creation.
Right.
It is a piece of satire, and the name itself is about chaos. And it is a lot of the time I have really wanted to come out into the open as Swami Albultananda
Mhm.
and become and act like the antithesis of all the popular gurus, that
Okay.
as a piece of satire. But my own instinct of self-preservation has stopped me from doing that.
Right.
Because tomorrow I think the Hindutva Brigade and all those guys will be after me.
Mhm.
So, but I still like coming out with these so-called pearls of wisdom, that Gurudev Alkultananda says. And so yeah, so some of them are about life, some of them are about the political situation. So
Right.
rarely I come out with a thing like that. Yeah.
Good, good, good. Where can one find these, Pramod? Like you have put them on your page or?
There's no single page.
Okay.
Uh, some of them are on my Facebook page.
Okay.
From
Okay.
the time I started my Facebook page, I have quoted Guruji,
Oh, okay.
Tulsi.
Nice.
Yeah.
I guess you
So
have published a couple of books as well.
yeah, I have, yeah.
Right. Sorry, you were saying something about Algultananda.
Yeah, I may start a page
Okay.
on Guruji alone.
Right.
When I do that, I'll let you know.
Definitely. 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 Okay. 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 So regarding the books that you published,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, See, the first one was on alternative healing.
Mhm.
It's called The Power of Positive Healing.
Right.
Um, it is specifically about using Ayurveda to cure HIV/AIDS.
Okay.
Okay, so I did a year's research on Ayurveda, and one specific practitioner, who was who used to live in this village called Gavnal in
Mhm.
the Maharashtra Karnataka border, in a deep village. So I lived with him for some time, sat in his clinic. Then I studied Ayurveda a little bit, not too
Right.
much. I studied Ayurveda a little bit, and then I wrote this book, taking a year. It was published by
Okay.
Gangaram.
Right.
That is my first book. Second book is a book called From the Terrace. It's a book of poetry.
Mm.
It was published by Writers Workshop in Calcutta.
Okay.
These are my two books, and some of my writing has been published in collections, different collections. One is mm, Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh,
That collection, one of my pieces have appeared.
right.
And then Journal of Literature and Aesthetics, the collections of British Council and Poetry Society India.
Okay.
So there I've been featured in some small collections like that.
Nice.
Your
Nice. It's really
interest
nice
in
to know.
food
And the
Yeah.
restaurant Mulberry. So suddenly, like all these things, and I have been seeing. I mean, almost every week's post and other dishes that are coming up. It's been like very exciting. So, what's the idea behind Mulberry? And uh, what?
See, Mulberry actually, when my wife was diagnosed with cancer,
Hmm.
mm, she had just started this thing called Mulberry. We wanted to. We are both foodies, we are both very ardent foodies.
Okay.
If you take a look at how we both look, from our sizes, and my wife has lost a lot of weight recently, but I still am pretty rodent, so to speak. So we love food, and the children also love food, and we grew up tasting. I'll give you an example of how much I love food. Standing at the gate of my parents' house, if my mother was frying fish in her
Right.
kitchen, from the smell, I could tell her which fish was frying,
Oh, okay.
whether it was pomfret or sardines. That is the extent of the foodie that I am.
Hmm.
So my wife had just started Mulberry. in a small way, like taking orders and giving food just before her cancer diagnosis.
Mm.
So during one of the meetings with her doctor, the doctor asked her, "What is your biggest dream?" Okay. So Lakshmi said that my biggest dream is to get cured of cancer, go back and start my food business with much greater in a much greater scale. He said, together we'll make it happen.
Oh.
And it happened. And she came back, and we wanted to support her in every way possible. So we did the entire branding for Mulberry. We tried out different possibilities. Uh, she started a branch of Mulberry called God's Own Payasam,
Mm-hmm.
okay, which only makes different kinds of payasam.
Python. Okay.
So recently, payasam, yeah, the Kerala traditional
Yeah. Yeah.
payasam. And recently, my son and my son is a marketing management graduate. So he knows a little bit about marketing, and one of his friends is a good illustrator and a branding person. Together, they rebranded Mulberry, and then they came up with this business idea of offering one signature dish every Sunday.
Right.
And that we tried about a month and a week, like 40, 45 days back. And from the moment we launched it, it's been a runaway success.
Right.
Every weekend we have to tell people that sorry, we are sold out. So it is her, mm, blood, sweat, and tears, and the entire family's effort behind it, and
Right.
a group of very trustworthy vendors who give us the right ingredients at the right time, and a lot of processes in our little. The whole thing is done. Cooking is done by one person in a tiny kitchen.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
There are no helpers. That is the USP.
Mm-hmm.
Touched by anybody else. Just one chef.
Right.
Uh, Whether sometimes we have close to 70 plates going out on
Mm.
a Sunday, and it is entirely cooked by.
Wow.
So that is because of the way she plans it out.
Right.
It's like a proper flow chart. I keep telling her
Mm.
she should join as the process head of some company.
Right.
She's
Right. Right.
capable of that. So that's the Mulberry story. I think the branding is the thing that helped us the most.
Okay.
The way the colors look and the way the image looks.
Right.
And my son-in-law Arun, um, he works with Facebook in Mountain View, California. So
Mm.
he gives us tips about how to promote it in digital media as well. It's
Wonderful.
an entirely family
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
family oriented
Very
outfit.
super. So, since we talked about food, I wanted to talk to you about this as well because many people told me like you are the most best source for, uh, the most trustworthy toddy shops in Kerala. So tell us
Yeah,
some of these joints, Pramod. Next time I'm in Kerala, I would definitely want to try them.
yeah. Now I'm getting a idea about what reputation I have out there. Yeah.
No, 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 not at all.
No, I'm just joking. I love that
Yeah.
reputation.
Okay.
See, toddy shops because of two things. One is Kishore. That is, toddy shops in Kerala are one of the most peaceful places that you will find.
Okay.
Beautiful, like one of my favorite places. It's out in the open. It's on a grassland, three sides water, one small house in the corner. You
Mm.
sit out in the open on rickety benches and tables, and you can watch the fishermen go by. And even the other toddy shops, they are so beautiful, so clean, okay, and so peaceful. So going there is an escape from everything. One,
Right.
and secondly, you get the most tasteful food in these toddy shops.
Yes. Yes.
Toddy is the icing on the cake. A lot of people I know, a lot of people I've taken to these toddy shops do not touch a drop of toddy or any other drink.
Mm.
But the food is so clean and so natural because all the spices are ground by them.
Right.
The, the fish has been caught from the lake next door.
Mm.
Okay, so you get and the recipes have been handed down through the generations of toddy shop.
Generations. Right.
I'll give you an example. One of my friends is the sous chef in leading five-star hotel in Bangalore.
Mm.
One of his assistant chefs is an ex-toddy shop owner.
Oh.
Okay, so you can understand how
Right.
important toddy shop cooking is in the whole universe of cooking.
Right.
So that is as far as the food, you get a lot of variety and
Mm.
everything tastes very fresh.
Right.
And thirdly, the fresh toddy. A lot of these places serve very fresh toddy, which is not highly intoxicating.
Right.
It is lighter than beer. If you have fresh toddy in the morning, it's so tasty. So it's a multi-sensory experience. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah.
It's like forget the landmarked places of Kerala.
Right.
You know, you can live with it if you miss the Chinese fishing nets.
Mm.
Okay, but going to a toddy shop, it is sacrilege if you don't do that. Yeah,
Yes.
there is
Yes. Yes.
I'll text you a longer list later, but there is
Definitely.
a my favorite is a place called Paraman's Toddy Shop,
Hmm.
about half an hour's drive away from Cochin, on the off the Alleppey Highway.
Right.
It is the place. I've taken people from different parts of India, different parts of the world,
Right.
to that place, and they still relish that experience.
Amazing. Amazing.
Chandil has gone there based on my
Okay.
recommendation. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
CK has gone to Paraman Study Shop.
Nice. 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 Great. So, thank you so much, Pramod. Thanks a lot for your time sharing these wonderful stories. I think the first word that I read about you is a career nomad. And I have constantly seen people being like super freaked out about the career, like, next year, this is the target, next year, this is the target, I have to be this and all. And among all this, I really wanted always to talk to somebody who has diversified interests and have enjoyed all of them fully. And life seems so peaceful among all the chaos. Just like the Algul Danan that you mentioned. So it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Pramod. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise, Kishore. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
And someday I wish to return the favor by asking you these questions, getting to know more about you. It will be
Definitely.
my great pleasure, and I'm glad that this happened.
Thank you so much.
And
Yeah.
God bless you, and may your venture really prosper, and may you do well.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, bro.